On behalf of Past Pupils Association of Visakha, UK, we welcome you all this Sunday evening. We do a lot of charity work for Visakhians in Sri Lanka and general public Sri Lankan charities, but I think this is the time that we've decided something, a little bit of TLC for ourselves. So I think this Dhamma talk will help us all looking after ourselves, and this will give something back to us. So let me introduce about Dhamma Center Colchester, Venerable Hokantra Panyavan for the Dhamma talk. Over to you, Bante.
Thank you, Yamuna. Good evening, everyone. As I do remember, this is to be conducted in English, isn't it, Yamuna? Right, thank you. So before we move on with the essential bana, let us all chant Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. I'm just going to mute everyone so that we do not have any disturbances to the recording, which is going to be done as well for the members who are unable to join together with us this evening. Today's session, on the special request of course, Yamuna and our dear Mahal as well, on behalf of the Visakha Past Pupils Association here in the UK, I have been requested to share a piece of Dhamma, a Dhamma talk, but not to also go too deep into it, but to keep it in, or to sort of speak on a piece of Dhamma that is applicable, practical, and also easy to grasp. So that is essentially what I hope and wish to do. The session will also have a meditation session, right? A small one, don't be too afraid, a small meditation session, which I will be guiding you through. And we will also give ample time for people to ask questions, if there are any questions to be raised, and to also sort of use that as a time that we could discuss any doubts over the Dhamma that you might have, right? Wonderful. So as the topic of today's gathering, we have, after discussing with both Mahal and Yamuna, we've decided on Dhamma in the 21st century. Now, within this part, or with everything that is going on that we see around us, it is a world that we see to be at times very frantic, at times very stressful, and at times, of course, we cannot forget the pleasures and the beauty of it as well. So we live through these highs and these lows of the world. And sometimes when we do come to experience certain things in our daily life, we might question the presence of Dhamma that we might have with regard to the way that we entertain, or the regard to the way that we deal with those certain things. Now let us come to the teachings of the Buddha. The teachings of the Buddha speaks about three very specific words, right? three very specific words, which is, we might sort of have heard these words before because of our Sri Lankan roots. Assada, Adinava, and Nissarana. Assada, Adinava, Nissarana. And I thought that these three words would form a very clear foundation for the talk today, and for all of you to take something back with you as you go off from the Zoom. Assada, Adinava, Nissarana. The word Assada in Pali means gratification. Gratification. The way that we joy and pleasure ourselves with those pieces and parts of this human experience, right? The pleasures, the happy moments, and also when it comes to distancing ourselves from pain, the journey of distancing ourselves from pain and journeying towards happiness as well, right? Because we do know, for some or even most, happiness is not as happy as working towards the happiness, right? We enjoy the fight, the struggle sometimes in trying to reach a state of happy. It's enthralling, it's adventurous sometimes. And some do enjoy this. What is asada? Asada is when, or is the tool that samsara would in that place use to have us beings, living animate creatures, beings with the ability to think, to grapple, to hold, to dig ourselves deeper into what the world is, right? Now, for example, if we are to purchase something, right? Let us say, okay, a house. Purchasing a house, having your own home, is only part. It's not even actually a problem in comparison to the maintenance, the upkeep of that house, isn't it? Because you can't just buy a house and forget about it. You must maintain it, you must upkeep it. But buying it was the first step that you made in digging yourself deeper into a commitment with what? With the house. Right? With the house. But we often do not think about that part. We think it'll sort of, we'll be able to do it, take it a day at a time. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. However, what you are doing in not thinking about is you are sacrificing. What are you sacrificing? Your time, your years, your youth. See how samsara works. In many of the things that we have committed ourselves to, we have made a sacrifice. We've sacrificed energy. We could have taken that energy into something less stressful, maybe something more spiritual, maybe something that could have helped us to cultivate ourselves, to live in a manner where we were mentally far more happy and pleased with ourselves. However, no. We choose these things. Now, this is the way samsara comes sapere, right? The kama loka, the sensual sphere, this is the way it works. This is the way the trap of the sensual sphere works. It gives us something with the fallacy that it is good that you've cultivated, developed, you've become a better person because of this thing. But at the end, what happens? Maranya hetuin api me siyallama dala yanawa. At or with death, we have to leave all of these things behind. Now, as Buddhists, we believe in a rebirth, don't we? And with rebirth, we know that, of course, we've gone to enough funerals. We know that we will leave everything behind. But why is it, knowing and seeing that reality, that we constantly focus on the things that we leave behind and not on the things that we take with us? Right? Why is it far more of ease to worry about a house, a car, and everything else that we think makes us better, but not worry about what karmas we accumulate, what essence of memory we leave at the time that we depart from this world on to our next life, right? Why is it that we do not think that? This is because of what the Buddha says, avidya, ignorance. Because of this ignorance, we ought to comfort ourselves in the present, or to teach ourselves, show ourselves something that is to do with that said comfort in the present, than looking at the bigger picture. If we did look at the bigger picture, we wouldn't be sort of, if you think about the waste that we accumulate as people, right? If we thought about the future, the bigger picture, would we be doing, would we be buying, would we be infatuating ourselves with things, when you look back, with things that really did not matter? Think about it. With things that really did not matter. Now, this is something that the Buddha is very clear on. How do I now live, conduct, practice, cultivate, develop, season myself with Dhamma, where I come to then walk a path of practice where I could, of course, do the things that I have to do, because we do have responsibilities and duties in our life. It is not only about us, but how do I maintain that integrity of mind where I am not swayed by everything that is thrown at my face? Meaning, from the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body. It is these 5 things that we try to satisfy, no? Isn't it? It is these 5 things that we try to satisfy all throughout our life, like throwing something into the fire consuming it. We keep on, through the years, we keep on trying to satisfy this burning fire, forgetting that this fire is never satisfied. It only burns. It only simply burns. This is gratification. The assumption, or a person who is in a position of life where that person's main goal and ideation of life is to satisfy the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body. These 5 things. Asada. It is through these 5 senses that we find ourselves in a position of entrapment, then comes Adinava. As we find ourselves entrapped, right? Now, obviously, we do not feel trapped. How dare that monk say so? I don't feel trapped. Obviously, we don't feel trapped. We would have won half of the game, more than half of the game, if we actually felt trapped. We don't feel trapped. We think up until the day that we have to leave, we think that we are winning the game. We think we are living the game. A fool's notion. Adina. Adina is this. When the mind constantly craves and clings, craves and clings, craves and clings, such a person, his life is not his own, but is determined by those forces that present itself before the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body. Right? So the person sways and keeps swaying, right? Sometimes, or in most instances, even causing confusion. Who am I? I don't know. How could we know? Because all we've been doing is swaying. Swaying what? Swaying through the pleasures, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. If a new thing comes up, if you have enough, but now a newer version comes up, our minds are now harboring towards that. Our children go to a good school already, but Mrs. Gamage down the road is now bragging about another school which has come up. I'm sorry, I hope they're not speaking about any Gamages on this forum. Just a name. He's bragging about another school that is even better. Now we are planning to sell our houses, move there, get our kids into that. The kids don't even care. Right? Now see, who are we trying to satisfy? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and now the mind comes. Right? When the person realizes my life is not my own, I am running this rat race again and again and again and again, again and again. Now half of the battle, more than half of that battle is won. Now the person starts realizing, my word, what is it that I am doing? Why is it that I'm doing the things that I'm doing? Just as I educated myself, went to one of the most prestigious Buddhist schools in the country, right? Went on to having bragging rights as well. Well deserved. It's a good school, right? Good bragging rights. Went into good universities, now living in the UK or some other part of the world, doing well for yourself. Okay, but I'm still seeking happiness. I am still seeking to fulfill a part of myself. But the thing is, as the Buddha says, everyone, me sattva thula sabai atmayak nati kota monowada api sampurna karanu ussaawath wenne. Again, within this being, if there is no true self, then what am I trying to fulfill? What am I trying to fulfill? Now, this is the mind. This is the mind game. In assuming that there is a self in this moment, metana පුද්ගලෙක් ආත්මයක් ඉන්නවා කියලා අපි හිතන මේ there, in assuming that there is a being, we want to now elaborate and sort of decorate, accessorize this being. It is only because the being The assumption of the being has arisen. But in true nature, when we assume, when we see the person who was an absolute saint, who was so kind and caring, at an event where she was faced with a certain adversity, a difficult or challenging situation, the personality shifted to being or becoming a person that even she did not recognize. Where is this being? She herself never experienced herself in this light ever before. Where is the being? The being was created at that moment when the condition presented itself, when the conditions presented itself. If we are beings, there is lobha, greed, hatred, delusion, non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. The 3 good and 3 bad roots. These good and bad roots exist within each and every one of us. And because they do, what happens? We are able to be good and bad. So then the question is, Adhinam. That is Adhinam. You see the danger of being a character that sways, being a character that is ruled by the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body, being a character who does not have the stability of present in oneself, has a mind that sways from one thing to another because of this lack of presence. Then comes Nissarana. Now in Nissarana, it is a freedom that arises within a person who lives in reality. It is a freedom that arises within the mind of a person who does not live in this imaginary hallucination where one assumes that whatever that is perceived around in this world that facilitates the data that is brought in by the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, and the body are permanent in nature. Hama deyakma venas venama. Anitya, impermanence. A person who is able to come into that understanding of life perceives everything that is seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and felt, knowing this is impermanent. But not only that, the power that those objects have in that person's life changes and shifts. Changes and shifts. When that change happens, what comes about? This being becomes far more sorted and stable. The change is essentially my life is dependent upon these things around me to this being, this person here now. Do you understand? The dependency that we have over so many things fueled by this world that we live in, that dependency is reduced and removed, even removed. That is the position that we come or attempt to come into, everyone. That is what the Buddhist path of practice is about. The Buddhist path of practice cares not about individuals. We speak about the hindrances that has its hold on each and every individual who walks this planet and samsara. We are not talking about times. The Dharma is akalic. It's beyond time, because these issues of mind, these hindrances, fetters, ogres, yogas, all of these, the Four Noble Truths, suffering, is going to be a part. If we have a body, this body is going to age. If we eat that which is, because we have a body, we have to feed ourselves. With what we put into this body, we will have to experience its effects. If you put in things that are unhealthy, you will be unhealthy. If we have bodies, then we will have to go through illness and then ultimately death. This is the reality. It is not about you. This is the world that we have karmically accumulated for ourselves, having not liberated ourselves at the time of the Buddha. How can we bring Nissarana into our lives was a specific point that we wanted to focus on during this talk. For a person who lives in this world governed by, everything that we have to do, we heard and we've adhered, we've taken up so many times a Panchasila, isn't it? Starting with not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and of course, not taking intoxication, right? That formed the basis of good living at the time of the Buddha and before the time of the Buddha as well, even during the time of the Rishis, far beyond 5,000 years before the Buddha, right? The Panchasila, the 5 precepts. The Buddha, however, having become the Buddha, he spoke about the Ajiva Attamaka Sila. And he spoke about it in this manner. He said, if a person wishes to achieve enlightenment or is inspired by the Dhamma, that person from that day forth will start practicing the Ajiva Attamaka Sila. Right? Ajiva Attamaka Sila, 8 precepts. What do we find different about the 8 precepts? Within the 8 precepts, these 8 precepts, we find Sampapalapa, Pisuna Vacha, Parusa Vacha, Musavada. These additions of virtue that comes about with right speech. Right? Right speech. Now, would you agree with me if I was to say this? We are social creatures. Most of the issues that we have in our lives is owed to the way with relationships or with the way that we, think of ourselves even. Would you agree if I was to say the lack of right speech was the foundation to most of the problems that we have today in our own lives? Think about it. Let us say this as an example. Let us take ourselves as an example. You do something that is not right? Or at least embarrassing. Okay, embarrassing. You do something that is embarrassing. Think about how you communicate with yourself at that moment inside your head. Right? Now, how you communicate with yourself inside your head. We do not want to be, this is a Dhamma talk, we can't be using profanity. So, right? So we will not go into detail. But how we speak to ourselves, that is a good example. Right? How do we communicate with ourselves? If we are by nature flawed, why is flaw taken as such a blasphemy? Are we not allowed to flaw? And if we do flaw, if we do make mistakes, how do we communicate with ourselves in coming out of that? We often treat ourselves so harsh in the way we communicate with our own minds. And when we do so, this creates a very unwholesome dialogue within us. Now, this is a problem that we see with our kids, the younger generation, right? The way that they would sometimes often communicate with themselves is so harsh that they would easily put themselves down to being depressed or having anxiety or some sort of mental related illness, when it was simply the fact of lack of confidence, maybe. They did not, or the way that they communicate with themselves is so poor that every time that they do communicate or tell themselves is sometimes putting themselves down so poorly that it is really not the case. Now, how do we communicate with other people? Right? In our relationships, how we communicate our feelings. If we do, Sri Lankans are not very good at communicating feelings for some reason, right? So we really have to go to the other side of the spectrum. We either don't talk or we shout. There's nothing in between. I'm sorry, I'm just joking. But in most cases, that is so. We are unable to communicate properly in a way that we feel that we are doing something wrong in truly voicing what we think or what is required, right? So any communication, in most cases, we find that communication with regards to what is required or what your assumptions or presumptions were, it turns very negative very fast. Why are we unable to communicate in a manner where it's healthy, where it is something that we could build upon? Now, this is a very important part, everyone. This Samma Vacha, as the Buddha says, the Samma Vacha builds the absolute bedrock of spiritual development, according to the teachings of the Buddha. That is why he said, a person who is inspired by the Dhamma starts adhering to Samma Vacha. Because this is how we build authentic, honest relationships, powerful, strong relationships in our life. This is how we come to develop powerful relationships with ourselves. Because if not, just imagine, when you're a Buddhist monk, right? Now, whilst during the time that I spent in the meditation center, we would meditate to up to 18 or so hours a day, right? Of course, when we first started, I couldn't meditate for even 5 minutes. But then it built on. At first, I remember that the communication that I had to get myself to do what I wanted, which was to meditate, was so bad that the mind did not listen. Because the mind also has an ego, right? It is almost as if dealing with two people all at once. My gosh. So you tell it to shut up, it does never listens. If you tell it to shut up, it will speak louder and louder and louder, up until the point that you think you're possessed. And then, of course, if you're in Sri Lanka, we go to the kapuas and the kattadiyas and make them richer, right? But at the end of the day, what you really wanted was not a devil dance. What you really wanted is to communicate with yourself proper. This communication, everyone, makes you happier. This communication, Samma Vacha, having communication with yourself and being able to have that communication with other people is so important because it puts and keeps your mind at ease. It keeps your mind at ease. Sampapalapa pisuna vacha parusa vata musavata. Frivolous speech, empty speech, harsh speech, and lying. Right? And lying. Now, in society, let us take the Sri Lankan community, let us take Visakha. How many strong women has Visakha produced? Visakha has produced a lot of strong women. I'm currently reading a book by a very respected figure, Anuja Vijayasekara, who spent time with the Taliban, and she was a Visakhian. And she writes about her experiences dealing with the Taliban. Right? Visakha has produced so many powerful, strong characters in women. Right? Now, in that essence, a girls' Buddhist school, what is the essence of Visakha? The foundation that was built by Celestina Dias, Madame Celestina Dias. What was the foundation that was built? Obviously not a flimsy one, right? Not a flimsy one. These foundations was based on the core ethics of Buddhism. Even if you are to take Dana, Sila, Bhavana, you can find Dana, Sila, Bhavana in the Visakhian education system and ethos. Right? For example, take Dana, generosity. From the time that the school was inaugurated, right, the vision of a woman to give the best of what she could offer to educate young girls in Sri Lanka, isn't that the most purest form of generosity? She was a businesswoman. She was a philanthropist. She was a very wealthy woman who could have very well enjoyed herself. Generosity. Generosity is also in being able to make another person happy, although you might not be happy. Isn't that what mothers do every single day for their kids? Mothers might be quite not so happy. Fathers might not be so happy, but we try to make our kids happy. Generosity. This moving nature of Buddhist ethos nurtures the growth and cultivation, wholesome growth and cultivation for generations to come. That is the moving nature of wholesome. Eka thamai kusale thiyena gatiya. Kusale kiyana de kavadaවත් බින්දින්නේ නැහැ. It always develops, makes stronger. This kusala, the best way for a lay person or even a monk to start cultivating this kusala is this samma vacha. Is samma vacha. How? Let us take an example. Dana. Now we might have given danas, no? Right? Sometimes there are events and moments that makes us question what we gave, right? Sometimes, even if it is, it doesn't have to be monks, it can be an orphanage or whatnot. Any sort of generosity that is displayed. In our mind, we've completed a good task, but now the mind starts questioning. Now, did you see? The communication and the way we communicated inside weakened the kusala that was done. Samavacha. This practice of Sammavacha, when it comes to bodhisattvas who practice leading up to Buddhahood, Sammavacha is one of the core principles that they follow. Because why? After Niyata Vivarana, bodhisattvas, when they sort of work, they work to build a community. And communities are not built on the basis of bad speech. It is built on the basis of good, wholesome speech. How other people are treated and made feel through our communications and actions. This is something that has been a plight of our community, I feel like. Right? Now, a common example that I would like to also mention is Now, for the people who are in the UK, I'm not going to quote names, but we have two very large Facebook groups concerning British professionals and people living in the UK here, right? You know the groups, right? If you're in the UK, you know the groups, two very large. I would ask you to go onto the group and scroll. Just simply scroll. Take a look at what you get on the group. Short eats. Short eats. That's what you get. I was doing this, right? And I was thinking, to myself, why am I on this group? I am on the group to actually post my Dhamma Center posters on that group. So I had to be on the group. So I stopped myself from unscribing then and there. But I thought Sri Lanka is one of the most literate countries in the whole of Asia. We have Sri Lankans working in top-notch firms all across the world. We have eminent figures who are Sri Lankan born and raised in high seats of power. We are an educated bunch. We are fighters. We fight for what we have. But what has happened to our culture, our community? Have we become selfish to an extent where most of my community has to sell short eats to get by? Or is it that what has happened? How can the main focus of the two largest Sri Lankan groups in the UK be all about short eats? And of course, the other is the OBEs and OGs and their drinking parties, right? That is also there, right? But that is more sort of seasonal. But short eats, it's annual. The short eats is annual. Regardless, now see, people. Samma vacha. If our speech, maybe we do not have the means nor power to help people in our community through means, but we could help them through our words. Didn't the Bodhisattva do that? Isn't it, didn't Buddhas do that? Didn't the Buddhas motivate, inspire, and make people fall in absolute love with the Dhamma that they left all that they had? Take up homelessness and meditate, attain nirvana, having been stuck in a cycle of rebirth and death for so long, finally, like they have gained ambrosia, they attained enlightenment. Through what? Samma vacha. Samma vacha. Didn't your mothers, who you are today, your mothers and fathers, isn't it because of their love? Of course, everyone has imperfections, but that care, that love, those words that were spoken, didn't that empower you to do and be strong as you are today? It did. No one can say otherwise. Your friends who you hold dear, isn't it the fact that they speak well to you? They make you feel strong. They make you feel stronger when they're there. Isn't that why you're stronger? It is. No one can say otherwise. Oh, with good friends. Samma vacha. Why is it that we find it so difficult to communicate with such samma vacha? The Buddha says this to that question. I'm asking the question and answering it as well. But bear with me. Why is it that we find it difficult to have that? Because we are all trapped within the hindrances, trapped in our insecurities, trapped in what our eye, ear, nose, tongue, body presents. In that entrapment, we feel as if this world is scarce because we only judge through what we have around us. We do not see the limitless potential that our world has to offer. So in that entrapment, we might assume, we might sort of start feeling even more senses of these hindrances. Me nivarna hindama thamai me hite thina katagati udatenni. So what does the Buddha say to that? Stop being puppets. Puppets of what? Your eye, your ear, your nose, your tongue, and your whole entire body. Wake up. At the end of the day, this world that we see around us is going to fade. From maybe you know, or maybe you don't. Since the 1980s, the world has literally lost its color. Right? Now, for example, we are going into more grayish, gray tones of color. Right? The colorfulness that we would have seen in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that does not exist anymore. Even if you would look at a general crowd gathered in front of a pub or wherever, you would find most of them or almost all of them dressed in darker or more lighter shades of clothing towards the grayscale, right? Towards the grayscale. Why is that? Pirihima. So now with sort of brain neuroprogramming, something that they found out is when people are feeling depressed, low, anxious, and dealing with all these different clinical type of mental illnesses, right, or situations, having color, light therapy helps them to liven their mood and get them back into spirits, right? To liven them and get them back into spirits. Api ජීවත් වෙන්නේ පිරිහෙන ලෝකෙක. පිරිහීම ගැන කතා කරනවා නම් අපි කන කෑම වුණත්, even the food that we eat, people might say it's organic, but it is not so organic when if you are to put it under a scientific instrument. During this time, everyone, this is the time that we need the Dhamma. This is the time that we have to hold on and embrace the Dhamma as much as possible, where we are able to break free of this sense of entrapment that we feel. Entrapment that has brought us to believe that this world that we might see through our vision of what the world is, our drushti, dittis, our views, is the world itself. It is not. When the mind starts working with Yoniso Manasikara, the world around us too changes. And we start realizing that as the shift of mind begins to happen, as the nivarnas come to weaken, as the mind starts glowing with Dharma in itself. When you know, let us take this example. When you know that people are by nature flawed, people have within them greed, hatred, delusion, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion, would you assume that a person would not do wrong? A person would do wrong. But would that person not do right as well? A person could do right as well. But we see that sense of reality helps us to deal with that sense even far better, even there. This is the teachings of the Buddha. This is where we come into. Now, let us quickly sit for some meditation, a really quick one. So sit comfortably, everyone, and let me guide you through this process. Let us take a deep breath in, closing our eyes, being comfortable for just this moment. Letting go of the breath, relaxing the shoulders, the body, relaxing the facial muscles, the hands, the thighs, the legs. Just let it all be for this moment. No control. Just be. Imagine that the whole body is simply relaxing. With every breath, every passing moment, the lighter, the lighter, the lighter we become. Gently, gently, gently. The mind coming into a state of ease, into a state of presence. Whatever you hear, smell, feel around you, gently, gently, continuing to be within this state of presence. Whatever that arises will pass, will fade away. Let us be in this moment right here, right now, as we gently, gently allow ourselves to experience the pleasure that comes from being within the present. Having done so much, how can we just be in a position of being? Imagine the mind being calm and tranquil, undisturbed. Enjoy the feeling of being relaxed, present. As you gently gently, gently with this presence, come to realize that we can be without the struggle to hold, that we can be without chasing, that we can be and be as strong without running. Gently, gently. Let us take a deep breath in, filling up our chest, letting go, relax each and every fiber of your being. With it, every fiber of muscle that you have. Relax, taking another deep breath in. Breathing out, relaxing deeper and deeper and deeper. And gently. Let us open our eyes and awaken to the present. So everyone, my final message to you is this. Meditate. Even for 5 minutes a day, learn and start to meditate. And I promise you, that it will bring a feeling of deep joy, a joy that can never be brought in by anything else in your life. It will bring about a connectedness of mind and body that you have never imagined. And it will bring about a state of contentment and peace that nothing in this world will ever bring or give you. Start with even 2 to 3 minutes a day, but let it grow. Because remember, the most important piece of this world for you has to be this mind. Whilst we focus on everything that we accumulate for our children, for ourselves, remember that we will all leave everything behind. So for this short time that we spend here in this world, as with the names and families that we have, let us endeavor to live it as beautifully and with a deep state of presence, not just riding the currents of the river, but to truly be present, to pull away from the grip and hold samsara has in you, the world has in you. Remember, you are not a passenger, you are the driver. But we forget that. And meditation will help you realize that again. So, this is my 1 hour. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask? Yes, Dimitri.
Thank you, Venerable. It's a wonderful speech. It struck quite a lot of nerves, whatever's going on in my mind at the moment. I think you touched on a very important topic right at the end of the meditation about holding on. I recently divorced, which was difficult, and I have let go of that. However, there's a possible chance that my children are going to be taken away from me. A couple of hours away, well, about 2.5 to 3 hours away. So my the ability for me to sort of have the same sort of contact with them has suddenly been, please behave, they're interacting at the moment. It's suddenly become it's a brand new element there where I won't be their main male figure in their lives, and for me this has become quite a hard thing just to grasp and let go of, to understand that nothing bad will happen to them, but I won't have the same presence, you know, and for me to let go of that is almost impossible. I was wondering if you have any sort of, I know I need to, I know nothing will happen to them, but you know, the mind says one thing, heart another.
Of course, Dimitri, I cannot imagine what you might be feeling, literally. But what I would say is, what you're feeling right now is the suffering connected to the loss of loved ones, or that process of separating from a loved one. And it would be quite challenging and difficult when it comes to, of course, your children, right? However, you have to recognize where that pain comes from. It is a separation from loved ones that you're going to be experiencing that pain, right? And at this moment, as a father, as a parent, the best thing that we would want is the best for our children. So let us keep our mind there, because truly that's all that matters. The best for our children, right? And take solace in that fact. Because when the mind is hurting, feeling this sense of pain, it would, of course, you know, it would make things more complex than they actually are. So allow yourself time and allow yourself that breathing space to really untangle yourself in this time, at this time, right? Where you're present with this, right? Because at the end of the day, your children are still going to be there, right? Your children are still going to be there. These are emotions. And Dimitri, I would say during this time, the best thing that you could do at this time, take it as a motivator to deal with this pain, which I'm sure is a lot, meditate. You know, and if you need any support on that, Dimitri, do get in touch, right? But start meditating, because I know that it will help you come into terms with the present, come into terms with reality, and also realize that what is most important is, rather than what I am feeling, is what is best for the children, which, you know, the circumstance might be different, whatever. But you having your mind, what is best for the kids is what is important, will give you so much more strength to deal with this situation in whatever the way the situation may unfold. All the best, Dimitri.
Thank you very much, Hamad.
There was someone else that,
Well, it was me.
yes.
Yes. Well, for me, what I want, well, it's not a question actually. It's actually a feeling also. I think it's a feeling that I always feel it in my heart as well, because as we say, we must not have anger or anything, any situation. Like I could have built many anger in my life also, where I have traveled in my life, having to go through what I have gone through. But now I'm beginning to understand that anger was not curing me. So I'm letting go of the anger. Because I let go of anger, love comes into me more. So I love more people. I love more people and I love more things. And I have more love in my life altogether. So that's actually making me much lighter and a much free person. I know when to say yes, not to say no. So that's another choice that we also have. We have to have a choice.
Absolutely.
We cannot have without a choice. We are given a choice. We are given these choices we can make. We should be able to make that choice distinctly to my place, because it's my place, it's my time, my mind. It's not being selfish about being me or whatever. But when you're feeling like that, you can open up more, because you're concerning yourself to be open to the adversary or whatever the problems you're having to deal with, by dealing in a way that is peaceful in your mind and your soul. And that has made me who I am at the moment. And I'm proud of it. And I'm actually proud of it.
Good.
Sorry.
Good. Thank you for sharing, Deepika. Thank you for sharing. The position that I would hold is this. To make for a person to go beyond, for a person to go even beyond that and to be even stronger, we are able to assert what we think, right? Speak freely as well, when it doesn't come from the place of mine, right? Because when compassion or when love happens, love is about everything else, right? Love is about everything else. Love is about what we give. And that is what we sort of feel more and more of. As the Dalai Lama says, my religion is about love and compassion, right? It's not about anything else. When the Dalai Lama was asked, what is your religion about? He said, my religion is about love and compassion. Right. The thing is, we think, like, for example, when we talk about letting go, and monks speak a lot about letting go, isn't it? Right. We would assume that we have to push things away in order to progress in the path. But sometimes we push things away and hold on to it even more. Right. or we push things away in such a negative manner that it really does not work out. Here, this is about not pushing things away, but realizing that everything has its time. It arises and it passes. Everything has its time. When the me factor goes away, then the ego softens. The ego is no more, or ego lessens. When the ego lessens, you're speaking from a far more powerful place with far more presence in the moment. And that is head turning. That is inspiring, because people can sense that energy. Yeah. All right. So anyone else before we close the session? If anyone has any questions or anything to share. Wonderful. I think there is no one. Thank you, Yamuna and Mahal, on behalf of the Visakha Pupils, Past Pupils Association of the UK, for having me speak to your community, your past pupils who are all gathered here. And I can see a lot of my sort of friends and devotees as well on the group. So thank you for organizing this Dhamma sharing, this Dhamma event. With all of the merits that we have accrued, I hope that we truly take something back from here, please, because that would mean that I have not wasted 1 hour of my day. So I really hope, even for 10 minutes or so, please do start meditating. Right? Please do start meditating. And I think it is the minimum of what we can do for ourselves, to feel that deep connectedness with ourselves. Right? Let this motivate you to come into realization of how this world, this reality, these 5 senses work, and for us to truly create a sense of mastery. And if that is done, if I have inspired any one of you, that would be an enormous field of merit. That field of merit, let us share with your founder, Madam Celestina Jeremiah's Dias, with a grateful heart for all her accomplishments and for what she was able to build for many generations following her. And if any other pupils who have passed are in requirement of merit, we maybe think about all of those past pupils, those belonging to the Past Pupils Association of the UK and other associations around the world. Maybe they all inherit this merit, and may this merit be of absolute strength to them wherever they might be. In saying so, let us think about all of these departed relatives, friends, and family, and chant Idam me jnati nang hotu sukhita hontu jnatayo. Idam me jnati nang hotu sukhita hontu jnatayo. Idam me jnati nang hotu sukhita hontu jnatayo. Akasattha cha bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakhantu sasanang. Akasattha cha bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakhantu desanang. Akasattha cha bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakhantu tvang sadhati. Theruvan Sarana, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the evening. Yamuna, would you like?
Theruvan Saranai, Swaminathan, sir.
All right.
One thing, Yamuna, I wanted to ask you something. I have a request from Sri Lanka by another doctor who is also doing lots of charity for us, if he can support under deaf and dumb from a තැනට bathroom facility එක. පුළුවන් ද බලමුද අපිට ඒකට මොන හරි උදව් කරන්න? Through the organization, if we can. Are you here? Can you hear? I can't hear you. You're muting. Unmute. Well, you need to unmute. Yamuna, you need to unmute. You can text me later.